Griffin Zander had no idea that watching a stranger's luggage for 5 minutes at a busy train station would flip his entire life upside down. "Excuse me." A woman's voice cut through the noise of the station. Griffin turned, adjusting the strap of his son's backpack over his shoulder. Kellen was snuggled against his side, half asleep, holding onto his plush dinosaur. The woman stood in front of him, breathless and radiant in a crisp white blouse tucked into high-waisted navy trousers. Her dark hair was pulled into a loose bun, and her phone was pressed to her ear, though she was clearly more focused on him. "Would you mind watching my bags?" she asked, motioning to a sleek leather duffel and a carry-on suitcase that looked far too expensive to be left alone. "I just need to use the restroom. I'll be quick." Griffin hesitated, glancing down at Kellen, then back up at her. "Sure, I got it." Her eyes softened. "Thank you, seriously, I'm Gabriella." "I'll be right back." She disappeared into the crowd, and Griffin sat on the bench beside her bags, bouncing his knee while Kellen leaned into his arm. "Daddy, are we gonna miss the train?" Kellen mumbled, rubbing his eyes. "No, buddy, we've got time." "Just helping someone," Griffin replied, brushing his son's hair out of his face. He didn't ask questions. He didn't snoop. He just sat there, waiting. But when 10 minutes passed, then 15, then 20, he started to get nervous. "Maybe she left," Kellen said, now wide awake and watching him. "She wouldn't do that," Griffin muttered. "She said she'd be quick." He stood, scanning the crowd for any sign of her. The duffel bag felt like a bomb waiting to go off under his care. He was about to flag down an attendant when someone rushed toward him from the opposite side of the station. "I'm so sorry," Gabriella gasped, her heels clicking against the tile. "The line was insane, and hey, it's okay. I was starting to think I'd have to take your bag home and raise it as my own," Griffin said with a grin. She laughed, breathless. "You're a lifesaver." "No problem." He extended his hand. "Griffin," she shook it. "Gabriella." "I remember," he said. Kellen tugged at his sleeve. "She's pretty." Griffin's face turned red. Gabriella crouched down to Kellen's height and smiled. "And who are you?" "I'm Kellen." "I'm 5.5. Daddy says I'm his favorite person." Gabriella looked up at Griffin with a smile that hit him square in the chest. "Well, that makes 2 of us." They ended up standing there longer than either of them expected. She asked about where they were headed. Griffin said he was taking Kellen to visit his grandparents outside Boston for a few days. She didn't say where she was going, only that she had an important meeting the next morning. When her train was called, she hesitated. "Hey. I know this is kind of crazy, but do you want to grab a coffee before yours leaves?" Griffin blinked. "You're about to miss your train." "I can take the next one," she said. "Come on. Let me at least buy you a drink for guarding my life's belongings." He looked at Kellen, who was grinning like he was in on a secret. "Okay, yeah, let's do it." They walked to the cafe inside the station. Gabriella paid without blinking, ordering him a flat white and a hot chocolate for Kellen. "You didn't have to do that," Griffin said. "I wanted to," Gabriella replied, stirring sugar into her drink. "You were kind to a stranger. That doesn't happen often." They sat at a table tucked into the corner. People rushed past them, luggage wheels rolling across the floor. But in that little moment, it felt like the world slowed down. "So, are you a full-time parent?" she asked, resting her chin on her hand. "Yeah," he said with a shrug. "Kellen's mom left when he was 2. I've been doing the solo thing since." "Wow," she whispered. "That's impressive," he shrugged. "You do what you have to, and your job." "I do custom cabinetry, built-in furniture, kitchens, wine cellars, all that." He took a sip of his coffee. "I work mostly local." "Gives me time with him." Gabriella nodded slowly, like she was tucking that information somewhere deep in her mind. "Sounds like hard work." "It is, but I like it." She didn't say what she did. He didn't ask. There was something easy about her, even though she looked like she belonged in a power suit behind a glass desk. When her second train was called, she stood, hesitating again. "I really wish I didn't have to go," she said. Griffin stood too. "Same here." Gabriella looked at Kellen, then back at Griffin. "Can I give you something?" Before he could answer, she pulled a card from her blazer pocket, a thick white card with gold embossed letters. Gabriella Brookshire. CEO Brookshire & Co. Griffin blinked. She smiled at his expression. "I know, I don't look like a CEO." "No, you do. I just didn't expect it." "Most people don't, but I'd like to see you again." Griffin stared at the card like it might vanish. You're serious, completely? She tilted her head. Unless you're not interested. He looked down at Kellen, then back at her. I'm very interested, Gabriella smiled. Good, I'll be in New York next week. Maybe I'll see you around. And just like that, she was gone, rolling her suitcase behind her, disappearing into the crowd. Griffin stood there for a long moment, the card still in his hand. Kellen tugged at his sleeve again. Daddy. Yeah, bud. Are you gonna marry her? Griffin laughed, his heart doing something he wasn't used to anymore. I don't know, he said. But I hope I see her again. Griffin didn't expect to hear from her. The card she left sat untouched on his nightstand for days, tucked beneath the charging cable he used every night. He had stared at her name more than once, wondering what exactly she had seen in a man wearing worn jeans and a flannel shirt with a 5-year-old clinging to his side. But with every passing day, he told himself the moment had probably meant more to him than it had to her. Then, on a rainy Thursday morning, a black town car pulled into the driveway of the workshop he rented on the edge of town. Griffin was in the middle of sanding down a cabinet door when the driver stepped out and approached the open garage bay. Griffin Zander, he straightened, hands covered in sawdust. Yeah, the man handed him a cream envelope with no return address. Delivery for you. Griffin watched the car pull away before he opened it. Inside was a single sheet of embossed stationery. You said you build things. Come show me. Gee, there was an address listed below, along with a time that was only 2 hours away. He washed up fast, leaving his apprentice in charge of the shop while he drove across the bridge into the city. The address led him to a sleek high-rise with mirrored windows and a doorman who knew his name before he even gave it. She was waiting in the lobby, a navy trench over her shoulders and a messenger bag slung across her body. You're punctual, she said, walking toward him. You're full of surprises, he replied. Gabriella led him to a private elevator, keyed in a code, and didn't say a word until they reached the top floor. When the doors opened, Griffin stepped into a penthouse that looked like it belonged on the cover of a magazine. Floor-to-ceiling glass walls, brushed stone floors, and a fireplace that stretched the length of an entire wall. I just bought the place, she said, walking ahead of him. It's completely empty. I want built-ins. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a hidden wet bar, maybe something for the music room. There's a music room, Griffin asked, trailing behind her as she pushed open a side door revealing a smaller space with a grand piano and acoustic panels already installed. I used to compose, Gabriella said, her hand grazing the wall, never professionally, just a thing I did when I needed to breathe. He studied the room, then turned to face her. You want this to feel personal or polished, both, she said. But mostly like someone lives here who isn't afraid to leave fingerprints on the walls. Griffin opened his notepad. You got time to walk me through the rest. For the next hour, she took him through every corner of the penthouse. The master bedroom had views of the harbor, the kitchen was still waiting on appliances, and the balcony was large enough to host a party of 50. But it wasn't the size or the view that caught him off guard, it was how little she seemed interested in impressing him with it. You don't flinch at the price tags, do you? He said after she asked his opinion on a reclaimed wood wall installation. I stopped checking them when I was 22, she replied evenly. I care about the work, not the flash. He scribbled something down, then paused. Why me? She leaned against the island. You didn't treat me like I was made of glass or like I was a prize. You were just human. I liked that. Griffin closed his notebook. I'm not sure I fit into this world of yours. Then I'll meet you in yours, she said. He didn't answer, but when she offered him a glass of water and asked him to stay for lunch, he didn't say no. They sat on the floor near the window, eating sandwiches she had delivered from a deli downstairs. For a while, they didn't speak. The silence between them was comfortable, rare. Then she turned to him. What scares you? He glanced at her. You ask a lot of questions. I don't like wasting time. He took a breath. Losing Kellen, not in the literal sense, just failing him. Gabriella didn't look away. You won't. How do you know? Because you think about it. That's more than most parents do. She leaned back, folding her arms behind her. My parents were never home. I had a different nanny every 6 months. I remember more about the housekeepers than I do about my mother's voice. Griffin turned to her. Is that why you work so much? I don't know how to stop, she said, but I'm trying to figure it out. He looked at her for a long time. Then maybe we're both rebuilding from something. She smiled, not a soft one, but one that held weight. Maybe we are. When he finally stood to leave, she walked him to the door herself. Send the quote when you're ready, she said as he stepped into the elevator. I will. The doors began to close, but she reached out and stopped them. I meant what I said about meeting you in your world, Griffin. I don't care about suits or stock options. I care about how you made my day feel different with nothing but a plastic dinosaur and a paper cup of coffee. He stared at her, his pulse doing something it hadn't done in years. I'll see you soon, Gabriella. And this time, he knew he would. Griffin adjusted the collar of the only blazer he owned, standing outside a townhouse on the Upper West Side with a wrapped sketchbook tucked under his arm and Kellen's small hand in his. The boy wore a button-up and khakis Gabriella's doing after she insisted they come to dinner at her place. Casual, she'd said, but the way her voice lifted on the word made Griffin opt for caution. Kellen looked up at the building's tall windows, then back at his dad. Is this a castle? Griffin crouched beside him. Not a castle, bud, just a big house. Does she have a dragon? Kellen asked, eyes wide. Griffin grinned. Not unless she's hiding it in the kitchen. The door swung open before he could knock. A woman in her late 50s greeted them with a warm smile and a linen apron dusted with flour. You must be Mr. Zander, she said, stepping aside. I'm Renata. Come in, both of you. Miss Brookshire is finishing something upstairs. Griffin stepped into the townhouse and paused. The space was nothing like the penthouse. This was warmth and earth tones, sunlight through stained glass, rugs that told stories, and books stacked in every corner. A guitar leaned near a fireplace, and the smell of roasted garlic drifted in from another room. Kellen's hand tightened around his. You cook? Griffin asked, looking at Renata. She tries to, came Gabriella's voice from the stairs. She descended barefoot, hair damp, wearing jeans and a sweatshirt that hung just off her shoulder. The sight of her like that undone, unguarded hit Griffin in a way he hadn't expected. I forgot how fast you are, she said. I was halfway through drying my hair. You look fine, he said and meant it. She smiled at Kellen. You hungry, sir? Kellen nodded. Starving? Good, Gabriella said. I made pasta. Well, Renata supervised while I tried not to burn it. They sat at the long walnut dining table that looked handmade. Griffin noticed the mismatched chairs, the candle wax hardened on the centerpiece, the chipped pottery bowl in the center, none of it curated, none of it cold. As they ate, Gabriella leaned toward Kellen. Okay, tell me everything about dinosaurs. Kellen launched into a detailed explanation of herbivores versus carnivores. Gabriella listened, asking questions like she was preparing for a dissertation. Griffin watched her, the way she gave Kellen her full attention without rushing him, without correcting him. And when she laughed, really laughed, it was the kind that pulled everyone into its gravity. After dinner, Kellen asked if he could draw. Gabriella led him to a sunroom filled with art supplies and a low table near the windows. Griffin followed her into the adjoining kitchen, where she poured 2 glasses of wine from a dark bottle already breathing on the counter. You were right, he said, about this place. It feels lived in. She handed him a glass. That's the idea. The penthouse is for meetings. This is home. He took a sip. How long have you had it? 3 years. I keep it quiet. Only a few people know it exists. And now I'm one of them. You are. Griffin set his glass down. Why? Gabriella leaned against the counter, arms crossed loosely over her chest. Because you don't ask me who I'm trying to be. You just see who I already am. He looked at her, the light from the pendant lamp softening the sharp lines of her face. You're not what I expected. Neither are you, she said. You walk into a room like you don't need it to like you. That's rare. I used to care. Then I had to learn how to fix a broken crib at 3 in the morning with one hand and hold a baby bottle with the other. She picked up his sketchbook from where he'd set it on the counter. Can I open this? He hesitated, then nodded. Gabriella peeled back the paper wrapping and flipped it open. Inside were pencil sketches, designs for the custom work she'd asked about, drawn to scale. But also, tucked between pages, were softer things. A child's handprint traced beside a rough sketch of a treehouse, a woman's profile drawn from memory, her hair pulled up, her eyes focused somewhere beyond the page. She stopped on that one, her brow furrowing slightly. Is this me? Griffin shifted. Yeah, she looked up. Why? Because I couldn't stop thinking about you, he said. And sometimes drawing's the only way I know how to make sense of that. Gabriella closed the sketchbook gently. You scare me, he blinked. What? You see through me too quickly. I've spent years learning how to control a room, but you don't let me do that with you. I'm not trying to control anything, he said. I'm just here. Exactly, she said, her voice quiet. And I don't know what to do with that. Before he could answer, Kellen called from the other room. Griffin went to check, finding him curled up on the rug, fast asleep beside a drawing of a stegosaurus in a top hat. Gabriella appeared beside him. He's out cold. I should get him home, Griffin said, lifting Kellen gently. Gabriella followed them to the door. As he stepped outside, she touched his arm. Griffin, he turned. I don't usually let people in like this, but I want you to come back, not because you're safe, but because you make everything feel different in the best way. He studied her for a long moment, Kellen's head against his shoulder. I'll come back, he said. But next time I want to make you dinner. She smiled, softer this time. Deal? And as he walked down the steps into the night, the city buzzing around them, he realized something he hadn't let himself believe in years. He was falling for her, and it wasn't cautious, it was all in. Griffin adjusted the knot of his tie as he stepped through the revolving doors of the Brookshire & Co. headquarters. He didn't wear suits, his job didn't require them, but today wasn't about work. It was about showing up. A week had passed since that night at Gabriella's townhouse. They hadn't seen each other since, but they'd spoken every evening after Kellen was in bed. Their calls had stretched past midnight more than once, filled with stories he hadn't told anyone in years and silences that didn't need filling. She never rushed him, she just listened. But today, Gabriella wasn't answering her phone. Her assistant had called him early that morning, asking if he could come by. No explanation, just a quiet urgency that made his stomach tighten. He stepped into the marbled lobby, nodding at the receptionist who waved him toward the elevators. The ride up was quiet, too quiet. When the doors opened on the top floor, Griffin found Gabriella alone in her office, seated behind a massive glass desk, her blazer draped over the back of her chair. The skyline stretched behind her, but she wasn't looking at it. She was staring at a document on her desk, fingers curled around a fountain pen that hadn't moved in some time. He stepped forward. You called? She looked up, her eyes tired, the kind of tired that no amount of sleep could fix. I didn't, she said. But I'm glad you came. Griffin closed the distance between them, setting his hand on the edge of the desk. What's going on? Gabriella pushed the file toward him. It's a merger proposal. If I sign it, Brookshire & Co. becomes another name under a global conglomerate. Twice the value, half the soul. Griffin glanced at the pages, then back at her. Why are you even considering it? She leaned back, folding her arms. Because the board wants it. Because my father's legacy is tangled in this company and they think I'm too emotional to run it long term. He took a breath. Are you? No, she said. But for the first time, I'm starting to wonder if they're right. I've built everything around this company. And now I don't know if I belong in the life I created. He stepped around the desk, standing beside her. You're not your job, Gabriella, she turned to him. Then what am I? He didn't flinch. You're someone who walked away from a train to buy a stranger coffee. Someone who learned Kellen's favorite dinosaur because you cared. Someone who offered a man a second chance without asking him to change a thing. Her eyes filled, but the tears didn't fall. I'm scared I don't know how to let go. You don't have to let go, he said. You just have to choose what matters most. She stood, her hands trembling slightly. I've been offered a seat on the board of that conglomerate. They want me to move to London by the end of the month. Griffin froze. Are you going? I don't know, she said. But I couldn't stomach the idea of deciding without seeing you first. He didn't speak right away. He just let the weight of it settle. Finally, he said, What would you be leaving behind? Gabriella blinked. Everything that feels real. He nodded slowly. Then maybe the answer's already in you. She looked at him like she wanted to believe it, then her phone buzzed. She silenced it without looking. I need to breathe, she said. Will you come with me? They left the building through a side entrance and walked through the city, down streets she didn't usually take, past bakeries and bookstores and flower carts. She didn't wear sunglasses or heels. She didn't pretend to be anyone. They ended up at a small community garden tucked between two buildings. Griffin led her inside, past the iron gate, to a bench near a patch of marigolds. "I bring Kellen here sometimes," he said. "He talks to the flowers like they're better listeners than I am." Gabriella sat beside him, her coat open, the breeze tugging at her sleeves. "I used to think love had to be complicated, that it had to cost something. And now," he asked, "I think maybe it's supposed to be a place you come back to after everything else tries to pull you away." He turned toward her. "Is that what I am to you?" She swallowed. Yes. The space between them closed, not rushed, not hungry, sure, and when her hand found his, it wasn't tentative. It was steady. "I don't want to go," she said. "Not if it means losing this." "You won't," he said. "But you have to choose it, not just today, every day." "I will," she said, "but I need time to fix what I've broken here, to rebuild the company the way it should be." He nodded. "Then I'll be here, however long it takes." She exhaled, the tension in her shoulders easing for the first time since he'd arrived. 3 weeks later, Gabriella stood in the center of the penthouse, her heels echoing on the finished hardwood. Custom built-ins lined the walls, the bar was hidden behind a sliding panel, and soft lighting bathed the space in warmth. Griffin stood beside her, Kellen tugging at his hand. "I promised him the first root beer would be here," Griffin said. Gabriella opened the bar and pulled out 2 glass bottles. "You always keep your word." "I try to." She handed one to Kellen and clinked the other against Griffin's. "To what we build." "To what lasts," he said. Kellen ran to the window, pressing his nose to the glass. Griffin turned to Gabriella. "You ever think about what comes after all this?" She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a ring box. Inside was a simple gold band. "I do," she said. Griffin stared at her, stunned. "Is this what it looks like?" "I'm not asking for a ceremony or a headline," she said. "I'm asking if you'll build a life with me, no contracts, just us." He took the box, his voice quiet. "You sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." Griffin slipped the ring onto her finger. Kellen turned, running back across the room. "Are you married now?" he asked. Gabriella crouched, pulling him into a hug. "We're something even better." And under the soft light of the home they'd built, with the city humming beyond the glass, Griffin knew he'd found exactly what he never thought he'd have again, a place to belong, a love that stayed. The autumn air carried a crisp bite that rustled the leaves along the Brooklyn sidewalk as Griffin adjusted the collar on Kellen's light jacket. They were standing outside a small brick storefront tucked between a patisserie and a florist, the windows covered in brown paper and a hand-painted "Coming Soon" sign taped to the glass. Gabriella stepped out from inside, wiping her hands on a paint-streaked apron. Streaks of navy and charcoal colored her fingers, and her hair was tied up in a knot that had clearly been redone several times through the day. "Did you bring the final samples?" she asked, lifting her brows as she approached. Griffin held up a flat box. "You'll have to fight Kellen for them. He's been guarding them like treasure all morning." Kellen grinned and ran up to her, offering the box with both hands. "They're the best ones, promise." Gabriella crouched. "Then I'm already sold." She opened the box and lifted out the sample panel, a deep walnut with a hand-carved edge, stained with a soft, cool finish. She ran her fingers over the grain and her eyes flicked up to Griffin. "This is exactly what I imagined," she said. "Good," he said. "Because it's yours." The space behind the brown paper was still raw exposed beams, drop cloths, half-assembled shelving, but it was theirs. A joint venture. A creative studio and gallery built from scratch. Gabriella had walked away from the merger weeks ago, dissolving the deal and stepping down as CEO. She hadn't sold it. She hadn't burned it down. She had simply passed the torch and walked toward something new. They named the studio Ash and North. Her middle name, his grandfather's surname. It was a place for people who made things: furniture, art, music, movement. A place where process mattered just as much as product. As they stepped inside, Griffin noticed the lighting fixtures had been installed. The natural light poured in through the skylights overhead, illuminating the space in a way that felt alive. "You've been working non-stop," he said, brushing a speck of paint off her cheek. "I've never been this tired in my life," she said, "and I've never felt better." He leaned in. You sure you don't miss arguing with board members over six-figure contracts? Not even a little, she said. Turns out, I like building things I can touch. Kellen wandered toward the back, where a small corner had already been turned into a play area. A second-hand easel, a few oversized beanbags, and a crate filled with dinosaur figurines. Gabriella took Griffin's hand and led him up the stairs to the lofted second level, where a long desk stretched along the window overlooking the street. On it sat 2 mugs of coffee still warm and a notebook filled with sketches and ideas, most of them hers, some in Kellen's handwriting. She turned to face him. I've been thinking, dangerous, he teased. I want to do this full out, she said. Not just the studio, us. I want the normal mornings, the school pickups, the Sunday grocery runs. I want to wake up next to you and not have it feel like I'm stealing time from somewhere else. You already have that, he said. I don't want to just have it, she whispered. I want to choose it. Every single day. He stepped closer, brushing a loose strand of hair from her forehead. Then let's choose it, all of it. Downstairs, the bell on the front door jingled and Renata stepped in, holding a bag of pastries and a thermos. She waved up at them before setting the food near the work table. She's officially adopted us, Gabriella said. She says you need feeding or you forget, Griffin replied. She's not wrong. That night, after Kellen was tucked into bed at Gabriella's townhouse, now their townhouse, and the last of the paintbrushes had been washed and laid out to dry, Griffin stepped out onto the balcony. The city lights shimmered below, but the real glow was behind him. Gabriella, barefoot in his old t-shirt, humming softly as she folded laundry. The scent of lavender and sawdust lingered in the air. You're staring, she said without turning. I'm allowed, he said. She glanced over her shoulder. You are. He walked back inside, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Remember when I told you I didn't think I fit in your world? She leaned into him. You didn't. And now we made our own. They stood there in silence for a moment, the kind that didn't need filling. Then she turned in his arms. I've been thinking about something else. He raised a brow. Another dangerous thought. I want to adopt him. Griffin blinked. What? Kellen, I want to be his legal guardian, your partner, his parent. I don't want any part of our life to feel separate. He didn't answer right away. His heart was too full, his breath caught somewhere between disbelief and overwhelming gratitude. You really mean that? I do, she said. If you'll let me. He kissed her, soft and sure. You're already his. He just doesn't know it yet. A month later, they stood in a quiet courtroom with Kellen between them, bouncing on the heels of his new sneakers. The judge smiled as she signed the approval. Gabriella knelt and held out her hand. Hi, she said. I'm your mom now. Kellen threw his arms around her neck. Finally, Gabriella laughed through tears. I love you, you know. I know, he said. You make the best grilled cheese. Outside the courthouse, a black town car waited not to whisk them away to a meeting or a penthouse, but because Renata insisted they celebrate properly. They drove to a park where a long table had been set under a string of twinkling lights. Friends, neighbors, and a few of Gabriella's former employees, all of whom had followed her to the new venture, were waiting. As the sun dipped low, Griffin stood with his arm around Gabriella, watching Kellen chase bubbles with 2 other kids from the studio's after-school program. Gabriella looked up at him. You happy? He kissed the top of her head. More than I knew was possible. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. One more surprise. He opened it to find a deed. A small property upstate nestled near a lake. The title listed both their names. A cabin, he asked. A place to escape when the city gets too loud, she said. Somewhere we can build something just for us. He folded the paper, held it against his heart, and pulled her in. No one's ever done this for me, he said. You did all of it, she whispered. I just gave it a name. They danced under the lights without music, just the rhythm of their hearts and the sound of Kellen's laughter echoing between them. And in that moment, beneath the stars and surrounded by everything they'd built not from wealth or legacy, but from love, they knew they had finally, truly arrived home.